Green New Deal. 3 short words that were virtually unknown in December are now top of mind for U.S. politicians. If you believe some, the Green New Deal, GND, is a moon landing for a new generation. Others claim it will lead to the end of hamburgers. And though it failed to pass a Senate vote in March, you will still be hearing lots about it during the lead-up to the 2020 presidential election. Let us break down exactly what is in the GND, and what is not, and why it matters. Okay, but what is it? For now, it is just a 14-page non-binding resolution, pretty much the lowest level of legislation you can have, that pushes for America to take a big role in mitigating climate change. It was introduced by a Democratic socialist, more on this below, and is by far the most ambitious climate policy to date. Specifically, the GND has 5 goals: achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions, create millions of high-wage jobs, invest in infrastructure and industry, secure clean air and water, promote justice and equity. According to the resolution, those goals will be achieved via efforts such as meeting 100% of the U.S. power demand with renewable and zero-emission sources by 2050, building a smart energy power grid, upgrading every building in the U.S. to improve energy efficiency, working with farmers to remove pollution from the agricultural sector, overhauling U.S. transportation systems by building high-speed rail and electric vehicle infrastructure. Photo: Franklin D. Roosevelt campaigned on a promise of a New Deal for America after years of economic depression. FDR Presidential Library and Museum. If it passed, the lofty GND would not create any of new programs or policies, as it is non-binding. Think of it as a framework rather than a guidebook. It's unlikely to pass as a resolution, but the point of it was to stake out standards future climate legislation should hold itself to, explained Alexander Kaufman, a climate reporter for HuffPost. Supporters of the GND say that overhauling America's energy infrastructure will create millions of new jobs. The name is a throwback to Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal, which revitalized the U.S. middle class following World War I through government-sponsored infrastructure projects. It's worth paying attention to because it has already dramatically shifted the center of where climate policy debate in the United States used to be, Mr. Kaufman said. How would this thing even work? Lots of Americans are asking the same question. The nascent GND proposal is high on ideals and short on details. Mark Jacobson, a professor of environmental engineering at Stanford University, says the GND is one of the first technologically feasible proposals surfaced at the federal level of government. These are technologies that actually work. We scouted them out 10 years ago. We need to focus on what actually works and keep our eyes on the ball, he said. One sticking point is how the U.S. would pay for such massive changes, with the cost of implementing the deal at $7 trillion $9. $8 trillion. Mr. Kaufman said the debate often draws comparisons to military spending. We don't have those same types of budget issues when it's other issues of national security, he said. Mr. Kaufman says it is no coincidence the deal comes at a moment when 2020 contenders are proposing to drastically increase income taxes for the country's top earners. We will not know for sure how the GND will be funded until it is out of this resolution phase and into a more concrete bill format. That could be a while. Or never. Who's behind it? The GND is most strongly associated with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is among the newest members of Congress but has become a progressive superstar to the left and a magnet for criticism from the right. Oc, as she has dubbed herself, introduced the GND on her very first day on Capitol Hill by staging a protest in the office of Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. She has also raised awareness of the GND through social media, where she influences more interactions than every U.S. politician except President Donald Trump. Oc has been helped by groups such as the Sunrise Movement, a youth-led activist group that has loudly advocated for the GND. External link, at Sunrise Movement. This is how Feinstein reacted to children asking her to support the hashtag Green New Deal resolution, with smugness plus disrespect. A video of the group protesting in Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein's office went viral in February. The optics, framing an 85-year-old senator against Americans too young to even vote, illustrate a larger point. A recent Gallup poll suggests that younger Americans worry the most about climate change. We know in our bones that this is an urgent crisis. If we don't address this now, and now means now, not in 10 years, we could potentially have an uninhabitable planet, said Garrett Blood, a spokesperson for the Sunrise Movement. That's just something Dianne Feinstein doesn't have to worry about. And younger Americans, millennials in particular, are about to become America's largest voting bloc. There is some evidence to suggest climate worries do not stay neatly within party lines. A November poll from Yale University found that although 82% of American voters had never heard of the Green New Deal, an overwhelming majority, 81%, supported its policies. That includes 64% of Republicans and 57% of conservative Republicans. Not a single Republican in Congress has said they would support the GND as written. What do the critics say? Mr. Trump and the Republican Party believe the GND is destined for failure. They see it as a way to convince voters that the Democratic Party is moving dangerously far to the left. The Green New Deal, or whatever the hell they call it, I encourage it, Mr. Trump said. No planes, no energy. When the wind stops blowing, that's the end of your electricity. This is the new Democratic platform. I don't want to talk them out of it, he said. I just want to be the Republican who runs against them. Republicans have also been quick to label the large-scale government program socialism, and liken it to the disastrous political situation in Venezuela. External link, at Frank Thorpe. Topics of opening statements at the weekly Senate GOP leadership presser. There are those who support the ideals of the GND, while disagreeing with the methods. Like Joseph Mikut, the director of climate policy at the Niskanen Center, a moderate libertarian think tank. Our counter to this big package is instead to look at carbon pricing as a means to incentivize the private sector to decide when, where, and how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, Mr. Mikut said. We agree that climate change is a problem that needs to be addressed and greenhouse gas emissions should be reduced. We don't think that necessitates a fundamentally different relationship between the government, industry, and the people. How is it shaping the Democratic Party? Notably, all 6 Democratic senators running in the 2020 presidential election have said they support the GND. External link, at Hawk. If your 2020 platform doesn't include a Green New Deal, are you really running for president? That means we are likely to hear a lot more about it on the campaign trail. It's a good litmus test for 2020 contenders, largely because it's the first policy proposal that's in line with what scientists have called for, Mr. Kaufman said. That doesn't mean every Democrat supports the GND. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, who once dismissed the GND as the Green Dream, or whatever, created a separate committee on climate rather than offer her support. The battle within the Democratic Party over the GND is part of a bigger war that we will see play out as Democrats pick their 2020 presidential candidate. Some early contenders, such as Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, feel that the party needs to lean further to the left to effectively combat the far-right policies of Mr. Trump. Others, like Amy Klobuchar, who despite saying she would vote for the deal called it aspirational and disagreed with some of its goals, believe the party should stay more centrist, to encourage would-be Republican voters to consider Democratic policies. So what happens next? Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell forced a vote on the GND in the U.S. Senate on March 27. All Senate Republicans voted against the deal. 4 Senate Democrats voted against it, the rest voted present instead of voting for or against it, saying that the early vote was a sham designed to divide the Democratic Party and catch those 2020 contenders voting against their stated priorities. Every member of this body will have the opportunity to cast a clear vote, Mr. McConnell said in a floor speech. The American people deserve to know which senators can reject this crippling proposal right away and which senators find themselves unable to do that. The Senate vote is a perfect example of that kind of superficial approach to government, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez said in response. What McConnell's doing is that he's trying to rush this bill to the floor without a hearing, without any markups, without working through committee, because he doesn't want to save our planet. Because he thinks we can drink oil in 30 years when all our water is poisoned. It's unlikely that we'll stop hearing about the GND anytime soon. The Democrats can reintroduce the bill on either floor of Congress with changes. Mr. Michaud said the policy had political traction and created space to talk about how the U.S. should be dealing with climate change. The entry of the Green New Deal, just as a rhetorically powerful item, has really amped up the level of attention that climate is getting in American politics, he said. External link: want to get more from this story? Tap below to get started.